I'm Sal Lavallo, and I've been to every country in the world. But what does that really mean? Not just factually that I've stepped foot in every nation, or that I have every stamp in my passport, or rather my 8 passports. But what do you learn from a journey around the world? For me, it starts in why I did it. I look at travel as being about learning and connecting. The world is an incredibly diverse place. 193 sovereign nations, a few dozen others that have different claims to statehood, 6,000 languages spoken, and 7.5 billion people. And all 7.5 billion of us are intimately connected by our humanity, by the simple truths that we all sleep, we eat, we laugh, we cry, and we love. And once you realize that, you'll see that there's not a single person on earth, whether the billionaire, the incarcerated, the oldest, or the smartest, that is dissimilar from you. Nobel Peace Prize winner Lester B. Pearson once said, "How can there be peace if we don't understand one another? And how can we understand if we don't know each other?" What I learned in traveling all around the world is that if we approach travel as looking for the foreign, then foreign is all that we'll ever get. But if instead we look at travel to connect with others on similarities, and only secondly to learn from the differences, then that builds connection, then we get to know each other, and then we understand. And that is the starting point to really travel. For me, my travels started to visit the people that I was already related to. I went with my grandmother to Germany to visit my mom's family, and I went to Italy and to Argentina to visit my father's. It was an amazing experience for me to go into a completely foreign place and be told, "Welcome home." Then I attended the United World College, a boarding school with students from 90 different countries. And there I became related to many more people from all around the world. And not related by blood, but related by human experience. So then I decided I wanted to start visiting them. I wanted to understand the lives that they lived before they came into mine. So as a teenager, I went to Oceania, to Central America, and to Europe. I stayed with my friends in their homes. I learned about their lives, and I met their families. And that's still my favorite way to travel, to be with my friends who are from those countries to get that unique local perspective. Up to now, I've stayed with friends from school in 75 different countries. Then I went to university and I started to study economic development and identity. I not only learned the way that we connect with one another, but it opened my eyes to the ways that we disconnect from one another. The cultural and institutional barriers that we put up between each other. We forget that we share humanity, and instead we focus on how we don't share the same race, gender, class, religion, or sexuality. And we let these things divide us. We forget that we all come into this world completely helpless, literally connected, attached to another human being, and then we spend so much of our time here trying to disconnect. We give power to the forces of patriarchy, imperialism, and enhancing inequality. So I wanted to understand why we have hierarchies, the haves and the have-nots, the people who we give power to and who we listen to, and those who we silence. One of my role models, Catherine Wasserman Davis, once said that it's more fun living in a world that you're trying to make better. And so I always like to have a purpose for when I'm traveling, something specific that I want to see, a person I want to meet, or something I want to do. I like to leave each place having myself and the location be a little bit better than when I first arrived. So I started to travel for my studies and for my research. I founded the NGO Trail of Seeds, and we worked with agricultural communities in Tanzania, in Brazil, in Venezuela, and in the island of St. Kitts. I became a strategy advisor, working with governments and with organizations on topics such as education and healthcare. Now I'm a foreign policy advisor. I look at the way that we connect with one another as nations. And all throughout this, I like to take my own personal trips. I especially like to go to places that I either knew nothing about or the ones that I only heard negative things of, because I knew that in those places there was a misunderstanding. And what I found in each and every one of those places is that exact same thing that I had in my own homes in the places dearest to me. I found lives being lived, people being happy, and people connecting with one another. And especially when I heard something negative, I wanted to go and see it for myself. So after living for 3 months here in India, I decided to go for 4 months to Pakistan. After living in Israel, I decided to go 3 separate times to Palestine. I went to Syria, to Yemen, to Afghanistan, Venezuela, and yes, even North Korea. And in each one of those, I saw people connecting. And yet, we somehow forget about that connection. And so when we hear about a bomb going off or about a woman being raped, we somehow dissociate. We think of it as too foreign. We think of it as something that they do without thinking of how similar they are to us. And yet, if we really want to have positive change, we can't just think about the outcome or the effects of something. We must think of the cause, of the foundation and the conditioning that led them there. And maybe those examples are a little bit severe, but in reality, we sometimes can't even accept the minute differences of people liking a different song, playing a different sport, or eating different food, because those things as well are foreign. But travel eliminates the foreign. It shows us how similar we are by showing that the passions and the fears are the same, we just manifest them in different ways. And when you start to meet people from all over the world, you begin to see that there are real and integral parts of the human experience that go beyond your own personal experience. And that kind of connection is what leads to peace and understanding, and that's the importance of travel. So let me tell you a story about someone completely different from me that I shared something with. I was in Guinea, in the forest region, in West Africa. I was on my way north to Mali. I had to go 36 hours on a dirt road in a truck that was built for 12 people, or was built for 7 people, but was filled with 12 people. I had to sit on the front seat next to a guy my age. At the beginning, we just talked about the journey, about the long road ahead, about where we would find food and how bumpy the road was. Then we started to laugh with one another when we started debating who was better, Ronaldo or Messi. And then we started to become familiar, and we started to share a little bit about where we came from and where we were hoping to go. And that's when he told me that the reason that he was in this truck, the reason he was going north, was to ultimately make it all the way up to Libya and then hopefully get on a boat illegally and cross into Italy. He was fleeing from poverty and hardship, and he was trying to make a more prosperous life for himself and for his family. His decision was already made, so I didn't ask him if he knew about the thousands of lives that are lost in the Mediterranean when these boats capsize, or the very real possibility of being kidnapped along the way and sold into slavery, which happened to a sister of a friend of mine. But I did tell him to make sure to bring a lot of water, because most of his journey would be through the Sahara Desert, and these trucks are really old, they break down and they get stranded. And then he asked me, what desert? He didn't realize that what lay between the home that he had left in Liberia and the one that he was hoping to make in Italy was the world's largest and hardest expanse. I was a little bit shocked, and I looked at him, and then I looked out at the bright green, beautiful expanse around us. And then I realized that even though we had spent the last 24 hours doing the exact same thing, literally sitting next to each other, sharing one small seat, in reality, our experiences were totally different. He was escaping, risking his life to try and live a better life. And I was there because I wanted to, for fun. And maybe if we had started our trip together talking about his poverty and my fun journey around the world, we would have never been able to connect, because we would have never thought that we could be similar. But that's not what we did. Instead, we started with what we shared. We started with the journey, our youth, and our dreams. Now, I don't know if he made it to Italy, but every time that I see a report about the migrant situation in the Mediterranean, I subconsciously will look for his face. And his face is one of dozens of the hundreds of people that I have met all around the world. People that I connected with because I approached them as similar to me rather than as different. And when you do that, when you start to realize that there are people who live completely different lives, then you understand them and you get to know them. But travel like this is a privilege. To be so comfortable in your own life that you're able to go out and explore those of others. It's incredibly important for me to acknowledge and be aware of and to think about how my journey to every country in the world at such a young age was made much easier by my identities as a white man with an American passport and enough money to do so. We all have different privileges that manifest in different ways at different times in our lives. We must appreciate these and be aware of them, but we also must work hard to share those with others. I like to share my travels with others because I know that many people aren't able to have these experiences. I want to share what I learned to help people who aren't able to do that on their own. So let me tell you a little bit more about my trip to every country. It kind of happened on accident. I didn't wake up one day and say that I was going to go to every single country in the world and then quickly go and check them off a list. I didn't even land in one region and then systematically cross off every country there. In fact, I've been to North America, South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia 20 separate times each. I've been to Oceania 5 times, and I've been to 50 countries 2 or more times. I spend about 1 week on average in each country, but sometimes less and sometimes a lot more. There's 15 countries that I've lived in for 2 or more months. The whole thing took about 13 years. But one thing that I'm not is careless. I find no joy, I don't think it's cool, and I don't get any excitement from being in danger. People think this is weird when I say that I was in Syria and Yemen in 2017, or when I tell them that I was in Iraq during the Battle of Mosul. But I always try and find the best ways to have the safest experiences. And actually, this isn't as hard as people think it is. The world isn't as scary and as dangerous as it's made out to be. And that's mostly because people are good. I have had bad things happen to me in my own home, as well as when I'm traveling abroad. But what always amazed me more than the cruelty of the few is the kindness of the many. There are always more people out there who want to help you than there are who want to hurt you. We need to be smart and rational with our safety when we travel, but we shouldn't let fear get in the way of any of our passions. But we also shouldn't let stupidity get us in trouble either. Travel should make you happy. It should be about what you want to do. I'm incredibly lucky with all the diverse travel experiences that I've had, and I've never tried to fit into one certain box. I wasn't only a budget traveler or only a luxury traveler. I didn't only go fast or only go slow. I wasn't always looking for authentic experiences, and I wasn't only visiting tourist sites. I did it all. If I wanted to relax, I would go and find a resort, and I would stay there the whole week, not leaving the hotel or the pool. But if I wanted an adventure, I'd put on a backpack and I'd go trekking or in buses overland in Africa or Central Asia. Because travel, again, should make you happy. You should travel how you want. You shouldn't let others tell you how to do that, the ways that you should feel fulfilled. So I am absolutely not here to tell you to visit every country. Because what I learned along the way is that the number of countries doesn't really matter. It's about meeting new people, listening to them, realizing that their experience is a true human experience, and maybe letting it change you. Knowing that you're better because of it, because you now better understand humanity, and thus yourself. Travel is about seeing the beautiful things in the world. It's about meeting new people and learning what you didn't even know you didn't know. And this is much easier to do in a foreign country where everything is completely new. But really, we can be traveling every day. We can listen to others. We can ask them to share the stories. Because travel is a mindset. It's a mindset of an openness to learn about the new. So look to the person on your left and look to the person on your right. They're different from you, but they are the same. They have something that they can teach you, something that you never knew you didn't know. And you have something you can teach them too. Because we all live a different 24 hours every single day. We all go through this world in our own unique experience. So go out there and look for the new, because that's what travel is about, learning and connecting. Thank you.